G'day, folks.
Are we on?
Welcome to, we are on, Dan. Nothing like a good start. It is talking Skaventide, Skaven. Dan, I always get confused if I should call it Skaven or Skaventide. Let's just stick to Skaven. The underworld.
Even the battle tome says Skaven.
Why is it called Skaventide, though? I've never really understood that.
The Allegiance is called Skaventide.
All
The same
right,
way
well,
with
we're talking...
like Blades of Corn, like, you know, whatever. So,
we're talking
Skaven.
Skaven.
Let's call them corn.
All right, well, long story short, we're talking rats. We're talking about the vermintide that sits under the cities of Sigmar. I am joined by not but one, but two amazing guests. First things first, we have Scabbers. Scabbers is a tournament regular in the Australian scene. I believe he's been at the Masters. Scabbers, absolute gun player, and his underling is Dan. Dan Brewer, probably, who needs no introduction. Top Australian player, Skaven to the bone, killer of of Scabbers.
I should probably wash him. I've never actually put him in the washing machine. He's starting to smell. So
that's perfect for rats. But Dan is a long-term Skaven player. He did faction focus for us. Very, very, very accomplished. So very excited to have you. Dan, say hello to the interwebs.
Hello, interwebs. So I've not done one of these for a long time now. It's been like a year or something. So yeah.
Has it been the last faction focus?
I think so. Yeah. I sort of had a bit of a break anyway. I just sort of burned out. And then I did go back to playing like one or two small events, but you know, I think there was a lot happening at those times, and yeah, but I wasn't really doing anything any different, so I think it went under the radar.
And I think, you know, it is good time to have a break. I know some people are, you know, taking this opportunity for COVID to look at new things, try new things. But I also know there's some hungry little rats in the chat right now who have been waiting for an update to Skaven. And I think, you know, Dan reached out and, you know, basically wanted to do a show, because I think for my point of view, when the Skaven book came out for the very first time, yourself, Thomas Holdsworth, another very accomplished Skaven player, you know, really excited about the book. You know, we saw lots of them on the table, and kind of as time's kind of progressed, we haven't seen as many on the table. So I'd love to kind of unpack with you, Dan, you know, what's so good about Skaven, but then also look at one of your lists to understand what does a current Skaven list look like in today's meta versus like 12, 18 months ago when we very first filmed that faction focus, where we kind of dug in really deep. So that's what I'd like out of today.
Yeah, I've changed my opinion on a lot of things since that faction focus, and the game itself has changed a lot. So sure, no problem.
Yeah, we've had at least 1 to 2 FAQs since that very first faction focus. So things have changed. The rat trap, for example.
Yes. I don't use that anymore. So,
all right. Well,
it was quite good.
it used to be really good. I remember you pinged me the first week that they come out, and I'm like, no, I want to get out. But before we get into the rats, I'd love to understand, how did you get into Age of Sigmar? How did you get into Warhammer? How did you get into this amazing hobby?
I used to play Warhammer because my best friend at school did when I was like 11 or 12, and the day that I just wandered into a GW is the first day that the Two Kings Army got released, so I just bought that because it was new, and that's how I started. But then I played for a few years. I used to play a lot of Blood Bowl because like my local was quite small, and then sort of phased out of it when I was like 15, 16, and then when I moved to Australia 4.5 years ago, I was playing Pokemon Go when everyone was playing Pokemon Go, and I dropped my iPhone trying to catch a Bulbasaur. And so I had to go to the Apple store in the CBD in Sydney to get it fixed. And they said it would take 2.5 hours, go wander around and come back. And I walked past the Warhammer store. I was like, I've just moved here. I had no friends. I was like, I might buy some, like, look at something. And got roped into buying stuff. And then that's sort of how I ended up making all my friends, was just by playing this game. It's sort of how I relocated to another country, if you like, because I moved here by myself and I didn't know anybody. So, and yeah, I thought it would be something that would kill time and that I could do by myself when I had nothing to do, because I had a lot of evenings free and stuff like that. So I didn't anticipate it would be how I would develop a lot of my social life. So yeah, I just found that it allowed me to, you know, meet a lot of people really quickly. the game was still sort of taking off, that the first General's Handbook had only just come out when I got involved in it. And the two armies I used to play when I was younger were Tomb Kings and Skaven. And it was predominantly Skaven. So I started with Tomb Kings, but then I played Mordheim and the Clanesian stuff. That's how I started playing Skaven. And I read their book, like 6th edition or whatever it was that I played. And I just thought it was really funny, like their lore, how they kill each other, how they're like backstabbing each other all the time, how they could just basically blow themselves up, and this real high risk, high reward strategy. And then when it came to Age of Sigmar, I've always been one of those people that I would rather play what I find fun and interesting, because that's what's going to keep me engaged, rather than what's good, because that's always changing. That only lasts. And as you said before, we were seeing Skaven everywhere a year ago, and now they're almost non-existent. And it's a funny wave to ride, because I was playing them and it was like, oh, that's nice, someone's playing Skaven too. Oh, you're doing quite good with Skaven too. Skaven are great, overpowered, nerf Skaven too. Where's Skaven on? So it's like, yeah, it's a funny thing, isn't it? So,
well, I mean, like, you know, in the very first year of Age of Sigmar, I was playing what is essentially the Cities of Sigmar, well before Firestorm. You know, I was playing that mixed order, and you know, when you find that free guild or that free people's army as well, you know, Danny Carroll was one that I met very early on. Matt the Wild Form Weiss in South Australia. There was only a few of us, and you kind of find that common bond. You're like that kind of underdog. And you're right. Like you talk a lot and go, you know, I'm trying handgunners. No, I like crossbows better. Well, why do you do that? And it's this awesome kind of learning journey. But I think that Sydney store was the very first time I met you in preparation for the very first CanCon.
Yes.
Which was, you know, like 50 odd players, and now look how big it is today. So very exciting.
Yeah, that's my first tournament. Yeah. So
it was my first tournament ever as well. Like I've been in fantasy battle since 4th edition or like late 3rd edition. Never played a tournament.
Yeah, okay. No, I've never played one either. I was the last ticket to that CanCon. Like I think someone dropped out, and I met everyone at this stage that already committed to it, but they just invited me, and I went along with it because it was like a weekend to go to Canberra. Like I said, I was new here, didn't know anyone, so I was like, yeah, sure, of course I'll go. So I went.
It's amazing how we all have that drop off for a little bit, whether it's during girls, whether it's toward university. There's always like this, you know, got into it as a teen or a kid, and then we kind of drop off for a little bit, and then somehow we all find our way back. You drop your phone finding Pokemon. My story is, you know, one of my oldest friend, Deke, would just put every year for my birthday would just give me Warhammer, and he just harassed the absolute bejesus out of me. And I finally come back. So I think we all have that little...
phone, I would have saved so much money. Yeah, I'd have no friends, but yeah.
You'd have a lot of money, but you'd be rich. But you have a lot of money, but so. No. Yeah, you have Pokemon Go.
I would have had a console.
Well, people are watching this going, where are the Skaven? How does Pokemon tie in? Funnily enough, your Verminlord. We don't have a photo of your Verminlord. But he does hold a Pokemon. All right, we'll go find it. But he is holding a Pokemon ball. So there is a link.
Did I drop him?
Oh god,
I might have broken. I don't know. So
long story short, he's got a Pokemon ball.
So I got a Master Ball. Whoops it.
All right. Well, we know how you got into Age of
Acolytes and Globadiers have Pokeballs, and then my Verminlord, because he's a Verminlord, has the Master Ball. So
there you go. That means nothing to me, but I'll just nod and smile because you're my guest. And
Liam will understand. So
yeah,
you've never approved with the Pokemon stuff. I understand. It's fine. It's not for everyone. I'm neither Skaven, right. So.
No, well, and nice to segue. Skaven is one of those ones that I always admire people who paint Skaven. I remember one of my good friends, Rob, was painting like 130, 150 clan rats, or 140. They come in 20s now. And like there's an absolute persistence. So I guess what drew you to Skaven? Of all the armies that are available during Warhammer Fantasy Battles and Age of Sigmar today, what drew you to this force?
I just think they're the most entertaining race. I mean, I think, Warhammer's always been good for having like a good sense of humor. But one of the things I've just always liked them is the fact that they can just kill themselves or kill each other. Or like, you know, in fantasy, you could shoot into combat and just kill your own guys and they didn't care. And they're just sort of maniacal, pure evil. Just a funny race. Like, They just did funny things, and I thought the Eshin stuff was cool. Like I like the ninjas, the rat ninjas. Like gutter runners were always my favorite unit. And yeah, even with Age of Sigmar, I started with the Clan Eshin stuff. I bought the Deceiver, I bought a bunch of gutter runners, I bought a bunch of night runners. The assassins I always liked. I always felt that they had really good characters and good story. Like Fanquil's still like my favorite character in Warhammer. I just thought they were really interesting. Like very unique. Like there's not really anything else you see where you can say that, you know, anthropomorphic or whatever that word is, like, you know, rat men. It's not like a common thing you see across a lot of different mediums, and if it is, it's usually someone ripping GW off because of Skaven. So it's very original. I just thought they were just really cool. I don't know, I still do. I just think they've got a sense of humor, and that's reflected in their playstyle. So
that's what's always drawn me to Skaven. So I guess my story with Skaven is my very first Skaven models. I actually got the Blood Bowl 2nd edition Skaven team because I mowed somebody's lawn. So I mowed somebody's lawn, and for payment they gave me the metal unpainted. I've still got the actual original. They're
valuable now. You could get a lot of money.
I can't find the models, but they were my first. They were my first experience. But you know, being an Empire player from, you know, back in the day, you know, our stories were always tied together. Being that the Skaven were kind of always harassing and attacking the cities, and you know, using those assassins and just being a general nuisance. And funnily enough, my CanCon display board this year, I tried to bring that into my story and had clan rats and rats kind of infiltrating my city. So, and you're right. I love that kind of that weird tech with the, you know, the warp sparks and the warp stone, and you know, it's just a crazy fun army, and it plays like that from my experience.
I always liked the lore that if they actually just worked together, they could easily overrun the entire world, kill everybody, and take it over, but they just couldn't get along. Like that was always one of the things in that book in fantasy. Like they're actually more than capable of just killing everybody, too busy fighting amongst themselves. So I just think that sums them up. So
and look what they did. Look what they did with Nagash and taking over the Black Pyramid, and you know, foiling. You know, there's a whole bunch of cool lore where they're just kind of, if they really wanted to try, they could absolutely take over the world. But they're good fun.
Yeah, for sure. They're funny. So
they kind of lost a little bit of that funniness in Warhammer Fantasy Battles to Sigmar, but they're probably more consistent now.
They definitely had that sort of extreme stuff. But even the way they worded it, I think like if you tunneled gutter runners, there's a chance you could roll something and it'd be like, I told you we should have turned left, and they would start arguing. Or like you know, just the Doom Rocket, the way it worked before, you could just blow yourself up. And I think that the new book did bring a lot of that stuff back, but it didn't have quite as devastating an effect as it used to. But I just thought it was funny, just the treacherous progression, stuff like that. So
look, I always love playing Skaven when they do the, you know, the more war power and they hurt themselves. It's just what I think about the army. So let me ask you, if I'm new to this book, or you know, I'm trying to learn this Skaven book, what are the strengths that you have found in the current meta, or you know, playing with the army?
I think the strength in numbers thing is they are designed to be a horde. I don't think MSU works with Skaven. They benefit in their allegiance abilities by having big units. Like for example, Storm Vermin is one you don't see a lot of, and it's in the list that I sent you. Don't bother with less than 40. If you're playing clan rats, don't bother. If you have plague monks, even now, even though they've had a nerf, don't bother unless you're taking all or none, really. That's kind of how I approach them when it comes to their units. They get +1 to hit with 20 models, +1 to win with 30, and the shields on the clan rats and the storm vermin is +1 save at 10 models. So every 10 models you gain a benefit, and because they've got strength in numbers, which is another allegiance ability, they get +2 bravery for every 10 in the unit. So a big unit is far more sufficient and efficient than a small unit. So the first thing I'd say is big units. Positioning, you have lots of screens, lots of models to take objectives. They can do everything, you just can't do everything on one list. And I think that's why they've fallen behind in the meta, because they can shoot if they want to, but you can't shoot, have a bunch of screens, have an awesome combat unit, and be great at magic. You can do some of those things, you can do all of those things, and that's why I got by with Skaven before the book, because even then they had so many units accessible to them. They could do everything. They had good combat units. Plague monks were good before. Jezzails were always really good.
Got those storm fiends as well, which can got lots of wounds that can do some damage.
Yeah, Storm Fiends are great, and I think Storm Fiends, it's not on the list that I've used here, but I still think Storm Fiends are very viable in the current meta, and I would absolutely recommend people use them. If you're running the absolute most optimal list, it would be very Skryre heavy, and I do think a unit of 6 Storm Fiends and an Engineer or an Arch-Warlock probably should be in that list, but I didn't include it, just because I think there's a giant weakness to it, which is if you kill a little 5-wound Engineer, which is very easy to do right now. The Storm Fiends are useless. So, but if you can protect that and your opponent can't deal with that, then they're the best unit in the army. So it's like a give or take. And I'd probably say that some Skaven up right now is depending on your matchup and depending on what your opponent has. There's a certain element to which, against like some lists, the game might be over before it's even started, just depending on what you've decided to bring. But if you tailored your list to them, there would be something you could bring to every game. And that's the problem in a tournament, is you can't do that. So that's why you don't see them.
Look, and I think moving them around the table, big blocks of units. One is tiring at times,
Yes.
and two, you've got to speed, got to be fast with your body. So
the speed thing I'm used to, but it's something new players struggle with.
Yeah. I know it's someone like yourself who's practiced a lot, but getting that rhythm can be challenging.
They're not a beginner army. I wouldn't recommend someone new start with Skaven. So
I know in the chat as well, and we'll probably talk about it pretty soon, is the chat's really curious about things like Molder armies and Eshin armies as well, because Skryre probably does get more love than the others, and I'm sure you got some thoughts around the other builds, but I think that's one cool thing as well, is not only do you have the customization with a large group of units available, but you've also got ways to build your force and go down a particular path that's more suited to your play style.
I think you can run very viable Claneshtin and Molder armies. I took Molder to a one-dayer we played with all the Giant Rats. I played you with my Molder army. I think they've got a place. I actually think there's a few armies you could probably wipe off the table with Claneshtin before they get going. I think there's a few armies that will smash them, but I think those two have a place. There's certainly builds you can use for both of them. I've played with both of them. And I'm a purist. I've played with every formation in the book. I've used every clan. I've used almost every unit. I have almost every unit. And they're sort of more fun, tailored armies. And again, it's that sort of rock, paper, scissors matchup. There's a few things that would smash them. But you can absolutely run a Clan Molder army and a Claneshtin army. So
I'll never forget Thomas Holdsworth running 200 Giant Rats. And then his story about taking Archaon down. So it can be done. I think
that would happen.
There is faith in the Great Horn Rat.
New Archaon. Yeah. So,
no, I think he had some pretty busted whipping of those rats.
Yeah, Giant Rats got nerfed actually in the book. So
just a little.
Yeah.
Cool. So what I might do at this particular point, Dan, is I'm going to go through the allegiance abilities. I'm going to bring them up on screen, and I'd love your advice and I guess your insights on what they all mean. So if I'm looking at this book and I'm like, right, the first rule that I get by being a Skaven is I get this basically lookout sir rule that applies to all of my, not only my shooting, but also my melee weapons. So if they're attacking, so like, what does that mean as an experienced player, whether it's list building, whether it's tactics, how do you perceive that particular rule? And I guess we'll kind of go through all of the rules.
Sure, no problem.
So the first one is the lead from the back. So lookout sir applies to attacks made by melee weapons. Yeah, no, sorry, yeah. So what does lead from the back mean to you as a player?
Survivability for your heroes, and there's a couple of things which aren't monsters in Skaven that probably should be. The Brood Horror, the Clawlord and Brood Horror, I don't think is a monster and gets the lookout sir in combat. The Screaming Bell, the Plague Furnace. It just makes, and the Screaming Bell is incredibly hard to take down. It's 13 wounds with a 4-up, 5-up. Lookouts it's hard to get to because it's going to be surrounded by bodies. The way to deal with it is actually to kill all the bodies around it so it becomes immobilized. It just gives you an opportunity, because if you look into the next rule, which is Scurry Away, it lets you survive to then move. It also becomes again, it's just one more thing that makes it harder for them to die. It keeps your heroes alive, which is very important for Skaven and pretty much any army in Age of Sigmar at the moment. So those foot heroes, it makes them not completely impossible to put in harm's way. And it makes some of the hero scoring objectives a bit safer when, like I said, the bell is incredibly hard to take down. And it can just do a lot of random things. So it just keeps you safer for longer unless you're going down the path of the Vermin Lords, which I probably wouldn't recommend apart from one of them. But yeah, I think it's just a nice rule to have, survivability. There are other things.
I think it's fantastic. People are paying artifacts to get Griffeather Charm to get that -1 to hit. And all of your heroes are basically going to benefit from that. And the fact you can put it on, the Grey Seer on the bell, anything like that, I think that's pretty crazy that everyone's going to be -1 to hit.
Yeah, so just a really good survivability ability. The Grey Seer on foot has another -1 to hit ability, so it can stack. Just means you can sort of put them in harm's way and move them forward a little bit, because there's a lot of Holy Within 13s in Skaven, and it just means that you can afford to do that. Like the Arch-Warlock, for example, is very tough. It's only 6 win hero, but it's free up save. It just makes him harder to hit, and then he can run away. And that's going into the next rule, which is Scurry Away, that your heroes can choose to move instead of piling in and attacking. And that can also just be like a very good objective grabber. So if someone moves forward and they leave their objective behind, you charge them, and then you move. You can, a Vermin Lord, they can move 24 inches. If they've moved 12, charge, and then they move 12 again after charging. So if someone leaves an objective exposed, Skaven are incredibly good at grabbing objectives. That's how they play. That's how they've always played. I think there's a small window of time where they became the overpower your opponent off the board army, and that's not the case anymore, and that is why they've dropped off. But they're still very good at playing objectives, and Scurry Away is a big part of that, because it forces someone to hit you first. If not, your Vermin Lord's out of there, or depending on what you're using, you're sort of messing with your opponent's activations. So, and if they don't think about it and they miss it, they're going to lose an objective, or your hero is going to get away, or it's going to reposition, and that's a big part of Skaven as well. Skaven are incredibly good at repositioning. So lead from the back lets you survive, Scurry Away lets you reposition, and the Clan Rats and the Storm Vermin all have retreat and charge. So that they can just move around the board very, very well, even though they're sort of slow on paper. They actually move very quickly, and the allegiance abilities are a big part of that. So,
and I think that's a really good point, because I remember I've watched a couple of your games. Runax, we were on the same team, and I remember when one of my games had finished, I would always come watch your games, and it was always amazing to see how you would manipulate the table with the bodies and the speed as well. Yep. And I think that kind of also goes back to taking those big blocks, because all of a sudden you're stringing around the board. You're blocking off deep striking. You're denying off zones. There's some pretty cool stuff you can do when you learn the movement game effectively for Skaven.
That's how I developed playing them. That overwhelming mass ability, is the +1 to hit and wound at 20 and 30 models. Another reason to take a big unit, but like you just mentioned, repositioning, board control, zoning. It kind of actually if you get good at that, it affords you a few mistakes, because you can realize, oh wait, I'm not zoned this corner. I'll just retreat and charge back into combat. And it's damage mitigation, because there's so many things in the game right now that can just steamroll you. They can dish out 40 wounds to a unit, but if you still just pin that unit in the corner, just something that I've always sort of done. It doesn't work in everything, but you can just get out of harm's way or really mitigate how much damage can be dealt to you. And the bigger the unit, because you're still going to have to take a hit in some form, you're just taking a weaker hit than you otherwise would, and the more bodies you have, the better. And then if you do want to strike back and you do want to reposition and then really go for someone and attack them, that's when you need the +1 to hit, +1 to wound, and it just makes them very efficient at killing. So, because every now and again you can't run around everything, you're going to have to kill something, and if you're going to do it, MSU is not how you play Skaven. They're designed to be played in high numbers, and that leads on to the next ability, which is strength in numbers, which is their bravery is terrible, and the more bodies you have, the less likely they are to run away. So, and there's lots of different ways of mitigating battle shock in the Skaven book. So
it means that basically because your base bravery is 4. Is that correct?
4 for Clan Rats, 5 for
if I think that Clan Rats, yeah. So all of a sudden you're in. Oh wow! I mean, but if you're moving to +2, do your banners, or do you have other ways to increase that bravery characteristic?
There's not other ways to increase it, but there are several ways to ignore the test entirely. And one of the big problems to Skaven at the minute is the catapults and Bone Reapers with the bravery shot, because there's not much they can do about it. But list that I did design and send to you is, I think, would suit better against Bone Reapers than some other armies. So yeah, it's harder to do that. But if you're taking battle shock tests with huge casualties as a Skaven player, you've messed up somewhere. Something's already gone wrong. So they don't really have many command abilities. So I try not to waste CP in battle shock, but it's always there. So well, they do have some. It depends how you build your army, but yeah, they can accumulate a lot of command points if they really want to. So they can also burn through them just as fast. So
and also in saying this as well, if you are taking large blocks of units, you're getting additional 1 bravery for every 10 models. So it's probably no surprise to get up to, you know, a bravery test of, you know, 8, 9, 10.
If you lose 4 clan rats, you're bravery 10. Like, you're not running away. So
yeah, that's pretty solid.
Yeah, and that's how they should be. When there's more of them, they're more brave. They're less likely to run. Makes sense. So fits the law. I think that was a good approach for them. So
yeah. One other thing you're obviously going to get, so you've got this Way of the Great Clans, but one other thing you're going to get is that Allegiance terrain piece. So I'd love to know, a little bit of curiosity, how do you play with your Norholes? So that's those 3 terrain pieces you get to put on the table. For yourself, it's treated as arcane, deadly for your opponent, and obviously you can tunnel through. What's your thinking, your strategy? How do you, obviously each table and scenario is different, but like what's some of the things that come to you when it comes to the Norhole?
I usually always put at least 1 in my own deployment zone just for the free arcane. It's very useful for putting 1, if not 2. There's a couple of things you can do with them. So if you put like a couple in your opponent's deployment zones near objectives, they're forced to guard them. And I put them slightly to the side so that I can come out at the side, still grab the objective, so it forces them to really backboard edge to protect from the Norhole. Because if not, I come around the other side and move across. So if you have like an army like Iron Jaws, for example, where the whole army wants to move forward, now there's 2 units of Ardboys or Brutes that have to sit back and stay on those Norholes, and it's sort of weakens the punch that they're going to dish out because they're going to hit a screen. Skaven love playing Iron Jaws. I think it's a very bad matchup for Iron Jaws, but it's just forcing maybe smaller armies that don't have as many units just to stay back. The other thing it can do positional wise is you can really surprise and take your opponent by surprise with the Norholes. For example, and I have done this before with Storm Fiends, I've put a Norhole on the side of the board. So if I'm looking at my screen sort of around here on the table, there, so I put it sort of in the middle on the side, so my opponent can't zone it at all, but there's an objective maybe here. And I've put 6 Storm Fiends through the Norhole, and then I've auto ran 6 in Engineer from my deployment zone. And now he's in range, and I've maybe put more warp power on those Storm Fiends before they've gone through the Norhole outside of unbind range. Or I've even put Jezzails, like a unit of 12 Jezzails through a Norhole before. Put them on the side of the board. Your opponent can't do anything about it. And then anything that is close enough to get them, I've shot off. So if you put Storm Fiends through, I think people use the bridge, and I have seen people use the bridge. That can fail. Your opponent can stop that. It might not be in the best place. It has worked for people, and when it works, it works. But I personally think it's a waste of points when you have Norholes. Because they're going to come to you eventually if you just move it behind your screens, and outgunning Skaven is quite hard to do, actually. So I think you can use them. A lot of people don't see that coming. So you can just really take people by surprise. And you get some armies that just don't do well spreading out. The Norholes are incredibly good at forcing people to spread out. Even if you don't intend on using them, people will still be forced to deal with them. So,
and that was going to be my next point. Was going to be it's a psychological damage as well. That the threat of 6 Storm Fiends being tunneled, that might not be your plan, but the opponent's thinking, well, if these Storm Fiends tunnel, they're going to hit me with their shooting attack. They're going to charge him with combat. They've got a whole bunch of wounds. So the threat alone can be dangerous, let alone then tapping into the strategy.
Yeah, I have no intention of using them sometimes, but as you're deploying, going 1 for 1, I'll put them down and someone will put something next to it, even though it doesn't make sense to use it.
They're trying to hard counter and they're broken their strategy, but actually you've just done a nice little psych.
Essentially, yeah. So yeah, it's useful. It's always good. And arcane, just be getting your spells off. Just always handy, always useful. So
some of the other rules that you're going to get is you've got this table here, which is an interesting one, which is the Way of the Great Clans. So talk to me through it. Do I have to choose one of these clans? is it just something that happens like, if I have, Molder stuff, the Molder guys get this? Like, how does this thing work?
Basically, you have access to all of these. So if you don't pick one, you have all of them. But depending on what you take, each one will tell you. So, for example, the Eshin one, the Masters of Murder, for each clan Eshin hero you can pick an enemy hero in your opponent's army, and you can reroll failed wound rolls. I believe. Have I read this? Yeah. Pick one enemy hero for each clan Eshin hero in your army. You can reroll wound rolls for attacks made by friendly clan Eshin units that target those enemy heroes in the battle. So you need a hero to access that ability. You just need one. That you could take a Deceiver in your army, and that's it. He gets that ability. But it's also playing into the clan. Like, if you're going to take that ability, you have to build around it really to get use out of it. Because if you don't have any other Eshin units other than the Deceiver, it's probably not going to do much. So if you go through them, the Master Clan.
Yeah, so your Master Clan is... So I was going to read it out to make life a bit easier for you. So Master Clan, each time a friendly Master Clan model uses a command ability, roll the dice. On a 5+, you receive an extra command point. So it's pretty obvious.
Built in A for quartz, really.
Well, there you go. It's
just useful.
It's free command points.
And you can give them an A for quartz. Yeah, so
you're doubling up on that 5+.
Yeah.
Clan Eshin. So if your army includes any clan Eshin heroes at the start of the first battle round, before determining which player has the first turn, you can pick one enemy hero for each clan Eshin hero in your army. You can re-roll wound rolls for the attacks made by friendly clan Eshin units that target that enemy hero in the battle.
Yes.
Pretty obvious.
Again, if you're playing a full Eshin army, it's got to speak for itself. So, but if you don't have any Eshin heroes, you won't benefit from that ability. But if you're going to take any Eshin units, you're probably taking a hero as well. So they're definitely a clan which doesn't make a lot of sense to play outside of a pure allegiance. So
unless you're going to go pure Eshin.
Yeah, unless you're going to go pure Eshin. If you look at the formations in this book, they're kind of designed to play all the clans pure. So if you want to play a pure Verminous army, that's when you would take that battalion. If you want to play a pure Molder army, that's when you take that battalion. If you want to play a pure Eshin army, you would definitely take the Eshin battalion. And you would definitely benefit from that ability. So, because the Eshin battalion is about rerolling hit rolls. And then the Allegiance ability is rerolling wound rolls. So, and then the Deceiver's command ability is rerolling wound rolls. So it's about an accumulation of abilities. So they're very complementary, but if you take them just in isolation, they're sort of not worth it. So, yep, that's kind of it.
The Verminous guys. So you pick a command. So when you pick a command trait, you can pick one command trait for up to 6 friendly claw lords, in addition to the one command trait for your general. If your general is not a claw lord, you must pick a different command trait for each claw lord that has a command trait. No model can have more than one command trait. You can use a command trait for that claw lord, even though they're not your general. Bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, so the claw lords, the claw lords which aren't your generals basically get access to command traits, and they're good. They're a good command trait. So one of the things in my list is a claw lord on Brood Horror. He's got Verminous Valor, which just means he can pass wounds on to a different unit, and he just gets that for free. Innate. So your heroes, most of these rules are sort of around the heroes. And then if you take, I haven't put it in this list, but I have ran it in the past, but I've just had like a claw on foot. I've given him a command trait, Brutal Fury, where he gains like an extra 3 attacks for the phase or something along those lines. And he also gains an attack every time he takes a wound. And his command ability is to gain an attack, and you can make him partner an attack when he dies. He does D3 damage. Like, I've had him dish out a storm before and people haven't seen it coming. So they have access to these extra abilities that I think can take people by surprise. So yeah. Just so if you're playing a Verminous army, you're probably taking the Warbringer, who's going to be your general, or you're going to have a Master Clan general. So it just means you can still access these abilities even without having to make them your general. So
good advice. You clan Molder, so at the start of the battle round, before determining which player has the first turn, you pick one friendly clan Molder fighting beast. What's a fighting beast?
A fighting beast is a keyword for a Hell Pit Abomination or a Brood Horror.
Gotcha. Cool. So your Brood Horrors or your Hell Pit Abominations. So you pick one of those models for each clan Molder in your army. The same fighting beast cannot be picked more than once to benefit from the ability. Add D3 to the wound characteristics of each of those models, so you roll separately. In addition, you can re-roll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by melee weapons from these models. Okay.
Yep. So it basically just means if you take a master model, which is the model hero, your hell pits and brood horrors will be better. So more wounds and reroll ones to hit. And the brood horror's only got 6 wounds and 8. It's 8 if there's a claw on top, but you could be between 7 and 9. And then the hell pit, I think, has 12, and that will boost it as well. So just more resilience and a little bit more reliability in combat. And you, again, if you're building a whole Molder army, you'd be playing around that ability. So you want to take the master molders because of their command ability, which lets them bring back the pack units. So again, it's very synergistic, complementary to each other. So you want a lot of pack units because that's what your units are in Molder, which is like the giant rats, rat ogres, wolf rats. They benefit because if they die, they can potentially come back. The hell pit, if it dies, can potentially come back. And then the master Molder sort of enables the bigger things to be better. So I believe the coach has dropped out.
I'm back. We're back.
Are you back?
Yeah, you with me? Yeah, I'm there. I'm back. So we're talking the claw loss. So. Yeah, keep going, by the way.
I'm finished with it. So basically saying Molder, again, if you're looking at the Molder, it's very much playing within that bubble. Like that Molder ability really is if you're going to be playing a clan Molder army. If not, you're not going to see it that much. So
the last two we've got is the Skryre. So Skryre is a bit more of a chunkier one. So you can see there's a lot going on here. If your army includes a clan Skryre hero at the start of the battle, before either army roll D3 and add 3 to the roll. The result is the number of Warpstone Sparks, and then you're able to use those Warpstone Sparks. So in your hero phase, your shooting phase, your combat phase, depending on something on your wizard, something on your clan Skryre. So talk to me through, without reading word for word, maybe you've got a better synopsis of the Warp Spark stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so the Warpstone Sparks you basically get access to them if you have a Skryre hero in your army, which is an engineer, a bombardier, or a Arch-Warlock. You get D3 plus 3 for the whole game, so you're going to start between 4 and 6. And generally speaking, you're going to use it in your hero phase and your shooting phase. So what it enables you to do in the hero phase is to re-roll a casting roll. So that was basically the most reliable way Skaven can cast a lot of spells, is if you're next to a gnaw hole and you've got re-rolls. So more Warp Power, for example, is a spell that they have to re-roll hidden win rolls. This allows the engineers to re-roll a failed cast. So, and it's quite essential for them. It makes them super reliable. It does damage them, but it makes them incredibly strong. So you're going to want to use sparks for that. That on a 1 afterwards, there's a chance the engineer might take D3 mortal wounds, which really isn't that big a risk. And then more importantly is the shooting phase, which is if you have up to 3 units wholly within 13 of the Skryre hero, they can add 1 to the damage characteristic of shooting. So that's going to be Jezzail's, Storm Fiends, Rattling Guns if you had it, but it's mostly going to be used on Jezzail's and Storm Fiends. So
I was going to say I've mostly suffered them against big blocks of Jezzail's.
Yeah, big blocks. Jezzail's are pretty good because they're quite self-sufficient. They do mortal wounds, and it doesn't add 1 to the mortal wound damage, and that's why I like Jezzail's a lot. Storm Fiends, like I said, there's a giant weakness of this little weak engineer has to sort of run with them, which some armies can't deal with, and that's fine. And if you position properly and you take people by surprise, you can get around that, but there is still like a giant weakness that comes with that. So it just enables your damage output to be vastly multiplied, especially on things like Skryre Acolytes. It just makes them, because they can run and shoot, and just making each one that goes through D3 plus 1 damage. It's just Ren 2, reroll hidden wound rolls. Like when the book first came out, the first unit I looked at was the Skryre Acolytes. I was like, that's by far the best unit in the book. I think for a time that was true. I think now that you can have, I think Bone Reapers have nerfed them, and I think Seraphon have nerfed them because they can just delete them before they can do anything. So
well, I remember
the meta's caught up with Skaven in a way.
Well, I remember you and I playing some time ago, and I had that colossal squig running at your. Yeah. Well, so my big colossal squig's all buffed up, ready to kind of bite some rats, and it's charging up the board with its 4d6 move, and it can run and charge because it's under the bad moon, setting this up for success. And then 30 buffed up acolytes do 60 damage to my colossal squig. Not 60 hits, 60 damage.
Damage. You pulled them into combat because you charged something else, but you pulled one of them within 3. I didn't want to get the squig. You brought that on yourself. It was actually a good move on your part because it meant I had to kill the squig rather than kill your Kratz.
Yeah, but what happened was I was going with my Mangler Squig Loon Boss in partnership, but the Mangler Squig Loon Boss who moves 3d6 rolled a 4. So I meant the Colossal Squig was well ahead, and I knew that I was going to get double turned. And but long story short, those acolytes did a whole bunch of damage. All I could do was laugh and try to attack with the rest of my army that Grey Seer on the bell.
Yeah, you're going after the bell, I believe.
I was going after that bell. I wanted.
That's where the mass damage. Yeah, the best way to deal with the bell is to ignore the bell entirely and kill the unit pushing it. But
well, you weren't moving. You said no block of shoots.
Yeah, like I said, I think the Skryre acolytes were the best unit in the book for a while, but I do think they've been caught by the meta. I do think salamanders will just remove them, and I do think any catapults and bone reapers will just remove them. And that's what's interesting, because if that bone reaper army doesn't have any catapults, acolytes will destroy them. They'll completely annihilate them. It's going to be a very one-sided game for somebody if you play bone reapers.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I think acolytes are very expensive and very easy to remove with a bravery shot, just the regular shots, because they're safe and they're expensive. Definition of glass cannon.
But the awesome thing is you've got those big screens to kind of protect.
I think I cut out.
No, you're still good. I'm with you. Apologies, guys. You've got some shitty Australian internet going on right now.
Okay, yeah.
Dan, you still with me?
I hear you. I think it's
cool. The last thing we've got is, you can. It's just Australian internet's hot garbage right now. The last one we've got is Clan Pestilens. So there's a whole big block here of bubonic blight plague, the Crimson Weave Curse, the Red Maw Plague, and then the Never Plague. I'm just going to go check on my internet really quickly. Do you want to just give guys a bit of a brief run through on what these what's it called?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk.
The Pestilence rule is. Let me go check my internet. Yes.
Yeah, no worries. So the Great Plagues are once per, I believe, battle round. So only once per battle round you can activate a Great Plague, and it's if a priest rolls a 6, an unmodified 6, you can activate one of these plagues. One of them is just to reroll once to pray, and the Norholders also increase your prayers, just so you're more likely to get prayers off in a pure Pestilens army. Pestilens armies have definitely taken a hit with the nerf to Plague Monks. The best one in there is the Red Maw Plague, because it can make heroes stood next to units attack each other. So there's a chance that if there's a hero close enough to you, say that you're playing like a hero objective and you've got a hero and an objective and surrounded by a unit, the Red Maw Plague can enable that hero to fight for you for a combat phase, but it's also the rest of the game. So if he starts within 3 of an enemy unit and isn't within 3 of one of your Skaven units, that hero will fight for you. So if Archaon is next to a bunch of Varangard on an objective, and you hit him with a Red Maw Plague, that combat phase, Archaon is playing for Skaven, and he will kill the Varangard. And they have to attack him back as well, because he's a part of your army. So that's by far the best ability there, but it's very positional dependent. But other than that, it's just sort of a lot of Mortal Wounds dished out. I don't recommend playing Clan Pestilens at the moment. I don't think they're...
Yeah. Back. Sorry, again, Australian internet is being really rubbish today. Dan, you with me?
I don't know what's going on, but I'm here. So...
Are you with me? Sorry, Australian internet is not garbage.
We do what we can.
So, I mean, there's some pretty cool rules, right? There's a whole bunch of things depending if you want to be Molder, Skryre, you want to be, Master Clan. There's a whole bunch of things. There's a whole bunch of things going on. Depending
Different
on
ways to
again,
play.
and the cool thing as well is that it's not forcing you down one path. If you do want to have like a mixed army, if you want to have a bit of Skryre and a bit of Molder, you can. It's not forcing one hand, but it is rewarding you to go deep if you want to get the best synergies in the book and build around that.
Yes, the synergy comes from the heroes combining with the units, and if you stick to that for some clans, that helps. But Skryre, for example, don't really have any chaff, so a mixed sort of Skryre heavy army is probably the most optimal way to play Skaven at the moment. But I think everyone's sort of seen that sort of stuff. Most of the damage is by Skryre. The way the meta's changed at the minute, I've amended how I played and sort of less Skryre stuff now, which you'll see. But if you're sticking with Molder or Eshin, then I would, or even a Verminus, you can sort of mostly stay with that. So,
well, I might as well bring up the list and we can talk through a little bit. And again, if you've watched this series in the past, this is not the one and only way to play Skaven. There are so many different ways to build a list. This is just one of the many examples that Dan has put on the table. And I guess I want to talk through the army. I want to talk through some of your decisions, and we can also talk about some things that you might flip out if you want to go down a certain path. So first things first, I can see you've gone the Realm of Ghyran. Why of all the realms is Ghyran the choice?
Because a Warpnor Vermin Lord with a Gear Strike is easily the best Vermin Lord in Skaven. I think the response to Vermin Lords was a massive overreaction. They were never that good. I think people definitely overreacted to them. People were calling to nerf them. The Vermin Lords can cast 2 spells. They never had access to a spell lore. None of them were that good in combat, and the spells in their War Scrolls are incredibly hard to cast. So unless you were playing Realm rules where the Vermin Lords can use the Realm spells, they really weren't as bad as people were making out. I think people made a meal out of that one. The one exception to that is the Warpnor. The Warpnor is the cheapest one and the best one by far. That team event, I took a Warpnor. The reason he's your general a lot of the time is because you can have a Master Clan general and it not change your battle line options. In this list, it's not really that relevant. But I made him my general because I've got Thankful, so he can't benefit from a command trait. Gear Strike, +1 to hit and wound. I've made him Malevolent, which is reroll 1s to wound. And then, as we all know, there's a command ability for reroll 1s to hit now that anybody can use. And on a 5-up after using that, he can get that command point back. So the Warpnor Vermin Lord is 2s reroll 1s, 2s reroll 1s, Ren 2, damage 5 at full strength. And I've used him a few times. He can just dish out 20 damage quite consistently and quite easily. He's also got a spell to pick out a model from a unit and just kill it. So, and you have to roll equal to, not higher, and I think it's cast on like a 5 or a 6. Splinter Screech, the spell. It's like a model within 12. So you just pick out like a middle model in a unit, and you can just kill them and break their coherency. He can deploy in a no hole if he wants to. He's moving 12. He scales horrendously, and that's the problem with him. Is once you start doing damage to him, his damage drops. So he goes from damage 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. And at that point, he's sort of useless. But he shouldn't really be striking second. You want to start with him, and he can just remove things by himself. He's very capable of removing other monsters, other heroes. Just a bargain for 260 points, and that's why you're playing Ghyran.
I guess you have to protect him as well. I think that's the if anyone who's seen that on I saw that at CanCon, and that was my enemy number 1. I had to take it down. So I guess you've got to play it smart, and he's going to stand, that model's going to stand out against all of your plague monks or your clan rats. So you got to be playing really smart, whether you're tapping into that no hole, you're screening, you're really making sure that is as protected as physically possible.
Yeah, and a lot of the meta maybe 12 months ago were very combat heavy armies. It was very hard to do that unless you were going around activations like striking first. With a bit more shooting in the game at the moment, he's a little bit more vulnerable, but the idea with this is to have quite a few different targets. So he's definitely a character killer, and he can wipe out a big horde or a big unit by himself. He's almost like a must include in almost every competitive Skaven list, in my opinion.
I mean, for 260 points, that's incredible value for what he can do.
Yeah, 2 cost wizard, 2 unbinds, 12 wounds, 4 up, 5 up. 2 0 1s, 2 0 1s. Could even get a CP back.
The next thing we've got is going to be Thankful. I know a lot of people are excited to hear about. So Dan, the next thing we're going to talk about is Thankful. I know people are very excited to understand why we've gone Thankful with the 4 Warp Fire and the Death Frenzy. What does Thankful bring to the table for 400 points?
Okay, this is definitely a meta choice, and this is adapting to the meta. Death Frenzy is essential for Skaven in the meta right now. Yeah. I think it's fundamental. They play Thankful is the best caster of Death Frenzy, and if you can't really see based on the screen, but I have a big block of 40 Storm Vermin in this list. Plague Monks got nerfed and went up in points. Storm Vermin came down, so he's there to be surrounded by a big mob of Storm Vermin. And he will melt a unit of 40 Mortek Guard if they stand in front of him. So he's definitely anti-horde. And the way they've built the list is to try and complement different things. He cannot take out a big single target. Maw-Crusher gets near him. He's not going to do much. His spell in combat might be useful against the Maw-Crusher, but generally it's not that great. He's a great caster. Death Frenzy, like I said, I think it's essential for how Skaven play at the minute. That's how they can win a lot of their games. So it's pile and attack when you die, but because it's not the Warbringer, you can only put it on a unit. You can't put it on a hero, and you don't want to be putting it on any of the heroes I've chosen anyway. But he's a +2 cast. If he's by a Gnawhole, it's +3 to cast. Be casting Death Frenzy on a 4. And I just think Death Frenzy and Storm Vermin is very, very, very strong. And his Warp Fire Throwers, because he moves 10, shoots 8. If there's a big block of Mortek Guard on, even if they've got the 5 of Mortal Wound save or whatever it may be, he's just going to melt Mortek Guard. So he's kind of like an anti-Bone Reaper. I put him in there as a meta adaptation for sure. But he's just sort of good at deleting things, really. I think the Fire Throwers are the way to go. Every now and again, an army where it's 4 Vampire Lords and Zombie Dragons with a new giant army when that comes out, where he's not as impactful, but at least he's got Death Frenzy and he can cast it consistently. And then I think Skaven can deal with those armies, like the 4 Terror Ghost army, which you don't really see much of now, or what the Giants might be, with Death Frenzy. So it's sort of a bit of a toolbox thing, because even if he's not as effective as he could, he can cast Death Frenzy very reliably. He's a great wizard. There's a few spells. And the other thing which I've included in this, which I think gets massively overlooked all the time, is the endless spell, the Bell of Doom. The Bell of Doom is amazing. It's an auto-pass battle shock for units within, I think, 13. It might even be 18. I'm pretty sure it's 13 and then 18 for your opponents for a bravery debuff. It's not wholly within, it's just within. So you cast this bell on the table.
13.
Just
wholly
one
within
counter
13.
within range of it. Yeah.
Do not take battle shock for Skaventide units that are within 13 of the model. Subtract 1 from the bravery if they're within 13. So, but you set it up wholly within 13.
It makes all Skaventide units pass battle shock.
Yeah, that's neat.
So I think the Bell of Doom is an essential spell which people don't take. It's very good.
People in the chat, by the way, are loving your Storm Vermin with Death Frenzy. They're loving it.
Using you.
The chat's loving the Storm Vermin with Death Frenzy.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Death Frenzy, Storm Vermin. They're loving.
Technical difficulties. Storm Vermin. Do you want me to talk about why I picked Storm Vermin?
No, they're loving Storm Vermin with Death Frenzy. Australian internet.
Sorry. I could look at the chat if that helps. I think this is Anthony's internet more than mine. Storm Vermin are great.
Yeah, no, Storm Vermin with Death Frenzy are just absolutely
Scabbers only fans.
Yeah. So what we've Warp Block Engineer. Dan, we've got the Warp Block Engineer.
I'm just reading the comments. The engineer?
Yep, so we got the Warp Block Engineer.
The reason I have an engineer.
Yep.
Okay, I can hear you now. I don't know what you said before about Storm Vermin, but
no, I was just saying that the chat loves Death Frenzy with the Storm Vermin.
Yeah, they have Retreat and Charge. They're way better than Plague Monks, and the problem with Plague Monks before was that you had to take 3 units of Clan Rats to really accommodate them, and they're one of your battle line choices. So I absolutely think you should be dropping Plague Monks and taking Storm Vermin instead. But the Engineer is there to complement the Warp Lightning Cannon. So as I said earlier on, I had basically 280 points left at the end of this list, or 290. Thankor can't deal with single target characters. If you're looking at Seraphon at the moment, a lot of their busts come from these small little support heroes. A Warp Lightning Cannon is designed for single target characters. It's designed to take off a Liege Kavalos. It's designed to take off a Skink Starseer. It's designed to take off those little heroes which are going to hide behind a unit that you can snipe off. So this does lack long range threat. But if there's like a Kavalos next to 2 catapults, I can probably try and snipe the catapult. Or if there's a Bone Shaper, I can probably try and take out those small 5-wound heroes of other people, even if it's just for a couple of rounds, or like try and take 12 wounds off a Maw Crusher and then try and drag it down with Death Frenzy and Storm Vermin. So it's there to pick characters off because Thankor can't do that. So Thankor can delete a horde, but he can't kill a single target character. A Warp Lightning Cannon can kill a single target character, but it can't delete a horde. And Storm Vermin can do both, and Death Frenzy enables them to do that. And that's where the synergy comes from in the list, because Thankor enables, so say Thankor can't deal with a single target character, he can enable Storm Vermin to do it, and the Warp Lightning Cannon can weaken that and take it out for them. And that's where the Engineer comes from, is because the Engineer allows the Warp Lightning Cannon to overcharge and fire 12 dice, basically, when you... there's a potential to deal 12 mortal wounds from the Warp Lightning Cannon. And even then, you can put that through a gnaw hole and move the Engineer up, and then try and snipe someone's character out, and then if it dies, no big deal. The alternative to the... actually, it's had a thought now, and I probably would make this change, is a Doom Wheel. I love the Doom Wheel. I use the Doom Wheel all the time. I love putting the Doom Wheel through a gnaw hole. It can run over your own screens, and it is actually a great character sniper. I've used it in tournaments as a character sniper before. If there's a hero like a, whatever it may be, like a foot hero, like again, like a Liege Kavalos or like a Ghoul King or whatever, putting more power on a Doom Wheel, sending it through
just
a normal
charge it up and
charge it up, shoot it off. It's a shooting unit, and then even if it's like, I played Raiden and his Hallowheart army, the spellcasting heroes one.
Hallowheart.
I said, he didn't guard the gnaw hole because his army had to stay together and he had to spread out. He couldn't do it. I sent a Doom Wheel through it with more warp power, and then shot his wizards from the back with the Doom Wheel and killed them. And so I would use either a Warp Lightning Cannon or a Doom Wheel, one or the other. They basically serve the same purpose. I didn't think about the Doom Wheel, and I'd probably change it now. But the Warp Lightning Cannon, like I said, it sort of complements probably Thankor a little bit more, because your opponent, if they're savvy to that and where you're putting the gnaw holes, can stop it. But it could just delete something that's designed to delete a hero that's hiding behind something. So
I think, and that kind of goes to the point that we mentioned at the start of the list, is that there is no one single list. Choose your own flavor. Flip. Clan Rats for Plague Mugs. Flip. Hero A for Hero B. But this is just one way to kind of bring all the synergies and the way you're looking. So it sounds like the Doom Wheel could be a nice interjection to this list.
Yeah, and like I said, the cannon might be better for it. I mean, people can zone the cannon. They can zone the Doom Wheel because there are no holes and whatever, but it's going to make them go backwards. And like I said, if there's something which Thankor can't deal with, then maybe the Warpmore can, maybe the cannon can, and maybe the Storm Vermin can. So it's about having multiple ways of dealing with different things. It's a bit of a toolbox army, the list that I chose, because it can kind of, in theory, it can take anything on, but it can get wiped. So, yeah.
It's awesome because you've got 3 or 4 at least different threats that you're going to have. You've got something that can kill hordes. You can kill something with high armor saves. You've got something that's a bit more elite focused. Something for every challenge that you might face in the current meta, because it is very scissor paper rock right now.
Yeah, and it's fast. So if you want to deal with the cannon, go ahead. Then Thankor's going to get you. If you want to deal with Thankor, go ahead. The cannon will get you. You want to deal with both? If you can, fine. The Warp Gnaw will get you, and the Storm Vermin will take you down. So meanwhile, Clan Rats on objectives, and you're just sort of winning and outpointing, and that's how Skaven win games. So Yeah, it's all about synergy, that list, even though it doesn't look it at first glance. So multiple threats, multiple ways of dealing with different things, dealing with anything that comes your way. The biggest criticism I'd have with this list is it lacked range. So that's where Jezzails and Stormfiends would come in. If you're having like a gun battle with someone, they're going to have to shift 120 rats. You're going to have to move forward eventually. Yeah. And then you'll have Thankwall waiting, and you'll have all these other units waiting. And that's ultimately why I chose Thankwall over Acolytes. So,
and that's one thing
Skaven is so essential.
And Skaven brings that wave to the table as well, so you can have this constant threat and just keep hitting them, and obviously moving and running around as well.
Skaven generally do well against shooting armies because you're going to shoot what you're in combat with. So I'm quite happy to just throw chaff into shooting units, like kill it.
Just run it tied up.
Yeah.
Keep all the juicy stuff away.
And then and then the warp mod kills them. So
waste 2, 3, 4 turns holding up, with a big block of clan rats. The last hero you've got before we move to your battle line choices is that Skaven Claw Lord on a Brood Horror. You've got the Mighty Warlord command trait of Verminous Valor. You've kind of touched a little bit on the Claw Lord already, but again, what does that bring to the table?
He's a tank. It's surprisingly resilient. Verminous Valor means on a 4-up you can pass wounds on to the another Skaventide unit within 3. He's not a monster. He gets lookouts in combat cover. 8 wounds, and he's bait, really. People go after him all the time. Often they don't kill him. He does heal every hero phase. So, sometimes people have taken him out, and if he does, it's no big deal. But he also has a command ability to give an extra attack to the clan rats if you want to polish some turds. But that same +1 attack can go to... He gives a bravery buff as well, if you're wholly within 13 of him. But he's also quite choppy in combat. He has Ren 2 on the weapon for some reason. If he uses command ability on himself, he can actually deal quite a bit of damage. Very underrated unit. Ironically, the 2 best hero choices in Skaven are both Forge World. I
was going to say that's a Forge World model. That's the
it is a Forge World model. Yeah, it's great. It's very underrated. It heals itself. People go after it. It doesn't die. It runs away in combat if it wants to. It repositions, and it gives buffs and different attacks to different units. Like when push comes to shove, if you put 2 attacks each on the clan rats, and there's 40 of them, and they're freeze, you give them real ones to hit if you want to, and then you have them piling and attacking when they die. Clan rats can do work. They can remove things. Storm Vermin, same. It buffs Storm Vermin, 3 attacks each. Freeze 2s, run 1 damage each, pile and attack when they die. Just hits hard, survivable. Good for hero scoring scenarios, just surround it in chaff. It's relatively fast, and like I said, you get lookouts in combat, and you can run away from combat if you want, or charge something and then move behind. It's just a very good utility thing, and it can be quite choppy when it wants to be.
And if they're
it's a good command ability.
If they're attacking your Brood Horror and your guy strike Vermin Lord is running around still, or if they take the Vermin Lord, you've still got the Brood Horror who can do some damage in combat. So you've still got a threat on the table.
Still a threat on the table, one that I would say it can just do damage under the radar and get ignored. But for some reason, whenever I play games, I usually put him in harm's way on purpose, and people go after him, often fail to kill him, and then whatever's waiting around him will get them. So people can't help it. If you just leave a hero out in the open right next to a unit, it's an obvious trap. People charge it all the time. It's just they can't help themselves, and he can do work and damage. You can't always rely on him to kill something. But I've been playing a Verminous list for a long time, and that's why I took it at the teams event. I had him there. He's probably my MVP for most games. Sometimes people do just kill him, and so what? You've killed him. All my other good stuff's still around. But he buffs Storm Vermin. And
160 points. That's nothing.
He's great. Yeah.
All right. Good value. Unfortunately, at Forge World, that is no longer available.
I think it might have stopped. I know the Wolf Rats did, but I think he disappeared and came back, and then he might have gone again. I don't know. But
maybe
it's a great model as well. I've had one for ages, but they're really good.
Next with your battle line. So this is a really curious one for me. You've got 2 units of clan rats and then 1 unit of storm vermin. All are at 40 block. The only thing I'm going to call out here as well is you've got 1 unit with the rusty spears, 1 unit with the rusty blades. So I guess a couple of questions. Why the 40s? Why the different weapon variants? And why the storm vermin versus another clan rat, or vice versa? Why not storm vermin over less clan rats?
As I said before, I don't think Skaven are an MSU army. You take the maximum unit size or don't bother. That applies to clan rats and stormvermin, just for board control, absorbing damage, screening, zoning, dealing damage themselves. I always go with 40s. The reason I have 2 different weapon options is because that's what I have. So it's easier for my opponent to tell apart them, but I would actually say the blades are better because I don't often rank them up. I very rarely rank and file. If you've ever seen one of my games, that they'll be in all sorts of weird shapes and whatever, constantly repositioning.
It's more like an art
to deal damage.
It's more like an art pattern than it is like, it's not like flat lines. It's all, moving around the boards. And I know we've had conversations around movement trays, and one of your ideas is exactly that. Is it's restrictive to your movement, and it forces you in a certain shape where I can see you really manipulate the board quite well by being freeform.
If you use movement trays as a Skaven player, maybe for other armies, like a gun line in a Cities of Sigmar army, it's not quite the same. You are significantly handicapping yourselves. The best thing about clan rats is retreat and charge. You don't want to be charging someone head on. You're not going to win that fight. You're there to reposition, take objectives, retreat and charge all the time, zone, and then make things difficult and make life hard for your opponent. And then hold a unit up, and then Vanquil runs behind them and burns them off. That's the whole point of clan rats. You're not there to fight someone. You are allowed to take a hit, and that's how Skaven's lore is. That's how they win games, is with the clan rats. But if they are going to take a hit, you want a bigger unit. If you are going to reposition, you want a bigger unit. If you're going to, try and take something out, which they can do, and push comes to shove, you want a bigger unit. I do think the blades are better because I don't often have them in like a little stack next to each other. And I think the stormvermin went under the radar when they went down in points. They were overcosted for a very long time. They still are a little bit, but 40 or don't bother. Your third battle line option, the battle line in Skaventide only, they're a lot better than Plague Monks, in my opinion. And the problem with Plague Monks is if you look at it, there's 280 for Plague Monks, and then you have to take a third battle line, which is another 120 points for 20 clan rats. And then that's 400 points, and then an extra 50 gets you 40 stormvermin anyway. You have slightly less bodies. You already have bodies. You don't need that. And stormvermin can retreat and charge. They can reposition, and they're lethal with Death Frenzy. They're absolutely lethal. If you have a big block of 40 stormvermin and that charges into something, attacks it. If something survives that, knowing that they'll pile an attack if you hit them back. There's not a lot of things that can deal with that. So very good against combat armies. Very good against orcs. Iron Jaws, things like that. So if they charge you with a bunch of pigs, they're going to hit the chaff screen, you then hit back. Or it also helps you get around the activation walls a lot, because you always get to fight. And that's why Fankel's in there again, because he's the most reliable caster of Death Frenzy in the army. I do think Death Frenzy is essential for how Skaven play in the meta at the minute. So,
it's a really powerful spell as well. I know certainly with some of my auto unbinds, that's the spell I'm targeting. I've just got to stop that.
Yeah. You do. You need to stop it. So, and also having those,
especially at critical moments.
Yeah, well, you want it. I mean, you can survive without it, but if you get it, you can't rely on getting it all the time. But it's there to. That's how to play. It's how they adapt to the meta as it is now. I would say it was less essential a year ago. A year ago, I think Acolytes were perfectly fine, and Jezzails were perfectly fine, and Storm Fiends were perfectly fine. I think the game has changed with shooting. Now I think Death Frenzy is how they survive when things are hitting so hard and going first and going twice. And if someone's going to charge into me, like, you're going to kill me, all right, I'm going to take you down with me. And I still have more bodies than you. That's how you win games with Skaven. So I do think Death Frenzy is pivotal for how they play in the meta at the moment. The problem is it's unreliable, and you can reliably cast it, but you can't stop your opponent from unbinding it. So that's sort of how it goes with them at the moment, I think. So.
And you've got the Warp Lightning Cannon. We've already talked about, as you might consider the Warp Lightning Cannon over, or taking the Doom Wheel instead of the Warp Lightning Cannon. Hey, Scappers. What's that bringing to the table? Is it that long range threat, those mortal wounds, or is it like, what else is it bringing to the table for you?
It's long range threat and mortal wounds that your opponent can't do anything about unless they backboard. So if someone has a Gaunt Summoner or like a Zeech Wizard or something, you just remove it. It's not like they can unbind you, because they can unbind Death Frenzy. And they can out magic you, but at least you can take off the Zangar Shaman, and just taking out support characters. So ultimately, I probably would advise the cannon over the Doom Wheel. It will kill itself within 2 or 3 turns, which is fine, and it might not always do the work. But if you're taking out like a Hag Queen, something like that, it's just a very good way of removing support heroes. Because if an army is pure combat, you've got that covered. You have, as long as you get Death Frenzy off most of the time, but you have that covered with screens. If you have a lot of ways around of dealing with that. Thankful, again, if they're a combat army, they're going to have to come to you, and he's quite quick. So he's there for those long-range stand-back type armies that have the ability just to delete the clan rats off the board, and just to take out their best stuff, really. So it's there to take out support heroes and things that are buffing things, because anything that's going to try and kill you in combat, you've got ways of dealing with that. You get to really control what they hit. This lets you take out, War Chanters. Again, Liege Cavalos is a big thing. Because if you're doing that against Bone Reapers, you're also disrupting how many points they get to spend for each.
Yeah. Well, you can take out that Harvester as well. If you got like a heavy Mortec Guard build, take down that Harvester to kind of stop that regeneration synergy.
Shoot the Harvester and then burn the Mortex with Thankful and do it in that order. So
I imagine in the Seraphon meta as well, that could be really powerful to try to take down Croque, given that it's a long-range threat too.
It's a long-range threat, but Croque's going to be surrounded by Saurus Guard and an Astroloth Bearer and things like that. So even with Croque, I think Croque is... I've been building Seraphon. I think Croque is kind of limited unless you can really expand his range. I'd be shooting his Astroloth Bearer. Like, if you can do 7 mortal wounds, Croque doesn't have any range. Doesn't matter how much damage you have if you can only go 12 inches. He's got that spell, which is anywhere on the board. But if you take his Astroloth Bearer out, I could ignore him. So that's probably how I would approach Croque.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I'm little wizards.
I'm more referring to having that Warp Lightning Cannon gives you the opportunity to take out those Death Stars. And obviously, taking down the Astrolith Bearer will, reduce the summoning and all that good stuff.
Well, that's just a specific example, but that's how I would approach Croque, because he'll pass wounds on. But like, if there's other support heroes, like, I don't know, the Skink Starseer is a big one for Seraphon with adding armor saves.
Hag Queen,
5 wounds.
Celestial Hurricanums, like there's just lots of things you can just like take out without hitting those big screens of Phoenix Guard, for example.
Yeah, support heroes, foot heroes, things like that. So, an Admiral, Chemist, you don't really see anymore, but like KO heroes, things like that.
And then finally, you've got the Bell of Doom, which we've already talked about, which is going to be a nice little bravery, immune to battle shock, or it's going to impact negatively to your opponents within 13-inch radius, not wholly within, just within 13, which is a nice little way to mitigate some of that battle shock that could happen with these average to low bravery of a generic clan rat, but though we know that they can go up in bravery.
And it's another reason to take a big unit, because you can tail off to the bell and reposition it. So if you win priority, your opponent moves it, you can just sort of unbind it and then just spell and recast if you really want to, but most of the time that's not necessary. If you have a big unit, you just need to get one model there. You can deal with that. So I think the Bell of Doom is great, often overlooked, and it lets you spend your CP on better things. Thankful has a command ability to basically use the free command abilities, the generic command abilities for free. Even just re-rolling ones to hit for the Warp North just means he's always got it, really, if you don't have to worry about Battle Shock. So, and even if your opponent has to get rid of it, so I'll just recast the next turn. Thankful casts it really, really easily. So I just think it's underrated and overlooked. So take anything away from what I've said about, take a Bell of Doom.
So. Well, everyone's endless spell they take out of the Skaven book is always the Warp Lightning Vortex, and I don't know if that's from an old behavior, if that's they still see value in it, but exploring the other options. Why did you drop it? Why? Because it obviously changed, right? The threat range changed after an FAQ, but why won't you bring the Warp Lightning Cannon to the table?
The Warp Lightning Vortex?
The Vortex.
The reason I took it in the first place was to stop people running and charging. I didn't take it for the damage. And I was like, oh, it's killing everything. This is great. But and the reason that I was doing that was because you could, hit someone from like 38 inches away. It was nearly impossible to avoid it. I do think people overreacted a little bit, that it was kind of telegraphed. You're obviously going to put an engineer by a gnaw hole, and if there's only one of your deployments that you know where that's going to be, and if you grouped all your stuff together, you were kind of asking for it, because you could have synergies and have things near each other without putting yourself in danger. But I do understand what they nerfed it. I agree with it for the most part, but I don't think it's so hard to cast. I don't especially agree with its place anymore. I think you can go for it, why not? But because you can't put it so far away from you anymore, it can actually backfire on you quite heavily, because you want to put it the other side of an objective where your opponent has to run through it to get to you. Before, for me, it was like stop you from flying, you can't run, and then just slowing armies down whilst I accumulate points. That's how I was seeing it. Now you can't cast it far away enough to do that. There is, go through a gnaw hole or skittle leap and then try and do it. There's so many things can fail in that combination. You're close enough to be unbound. You might fail a cast and your engineers are sitting duck, and I just don't think it's worth it.
Is it worth like a Balewind Vortex and then the next turn throwing the Vortex?
You can't, because it's an endless spell, so a Balewind won't extend the range. So no. But the big thing with the Vortex was the Warp Lightning Vortex was that you could do it safely. So you could be out of their unbind range as long as you're not opposite them directly. And then put it somewhere on the board where they can't go. So that's why it was so good. The range was why it was great. It could do no damage, and I still would have taken it for the range.
The range used to be bonkers, and now the range has been pulled back significantly.
It's been halved. So now you're going to get in your own way. 13 to set the first one up, and then 7, 7, 7, and then a 6-inch radius. But you're going to get in your own way, because the Vortex actually was very unhelpful if it was about an objective, because you're going to have to go there. Like, it could backfire on you quite badly. The reason it was so good is because you could just put it in someone's deployment zone where you don't need to be, or just around the heroes, or slow something down, or stop it moving entirely, and your opponent can outrange that now. And then if they got forward, you put shackles around them, and it's not worth it now. I just don't think. Like I said, you can still try and do it by going through gnaw holes and skittle leaping, but I don't think you should be taking skittle leap. I don't think it's worth it. And there's too many things can go wrong. It's too easy to stop. It's not consistent enough to be worthwhile. So
why do you say that? Because you used to be a big advocate of skittle leap as well. That was something that you used for a while.
I used skittle leap when it was the Verminlord Deceiver.
Yeah.
And when it was just the Deceiver, and I was casting a free. I haven't used it at all in the new book. I don't recommend it in the new book. When people were using it to then cast the Vortex, I never agreed with that. I never thought that was a good idea. Just because, like I said, you're putting yourself in harm's way, and you're also putting yourself in a mind range. And the best thing about the Vortex is you didn't have to do that. So you didn't have to come forwards, and you didn't have to reposition. And that spell lore is only accessible by Grey Seers. And I think Death Frenzy is a better spell, frankly. I'd argue the Plague is a better spell, and they already have gnaw holes. You don't need to reposition, so you already have so many ways of repositioning. And I actually don't like the 9-away mechanic for Skaven that much, unless it's worthwhile. Unless it's Storm Fiends or something like that. I can just
when you say 9 away, when you say 9 away,
teleporting 9 away
from the gnaw holes. Oh, skittle leap 9 away.
Gnaw holes as well. Skittle leap is 9 away, 6 if it's dreaded skittle leap with a Deceiver. But the way I used to use it is I used to skittle leap an engineer with an assassin hidden in the engineer, 6 away, and then cast the engineer's spells, the Arch-Warlock, make it claw, use as Warp Fire Thrower, and then charge in with Deathmaster Snitch hidden inside the Arch-Warlock, and then jump out and kill whatever it was. And I won quite a few games by doing that. I went to a tournament in the UK. There's a few things happened there, but that's how I was winning my games. Is people were leaving a little gap, expecting me to skittle leap the Deceiver. I was skittle leaping Ica Claw with Deathmaster Snitch hidden inside, casting his spells, using his Warp Fire Thrower, and then jumping out the assassin. Now I wouldn't recommend skittle leaping the way it is in the lore now. I just don't think you already can teleport through gnaw holes, and also repositioning 9 away isn't favourable. It's more of sitting duck. I don't really understand why people have this idea that doing that is a really good ability. Often it isn't. Like, if you're usually just moving for an unfavourable charge, but they're probably going next. And unless you've got some sort of thing to do from more than 9 away, it's not worth it, and it can be zoned and stopped very easily. So I just don't think it's worthwhile.
And I agree. As someone who, as a Gloomspite Gits player, uses the Hand of Gork, which is teleport anywhere on the board as long as you're outside of 9 from your opponent, that's a 75% chance of a fail of a charge. When I drop those fanatics out, which is another 3 inches and brings me within 6 of an opponent, that's still a 50-50. And if I fail it, you can assume the unit's gone. And that's probably no different.
Yeah. I can zone you, and you don't have any other ways to reposition, and you're slower. Skaven have hundreds of ways to reposition. They're generally quite quick, and they can sort of get themselves very close. They don't need to do that. And the other thing is they need to stay near their heroes a lot of the time. Like all of those allegiance abilities I spoke about before are generally from the heroes. And you want to be hiding behind your screens. You don't want to be separated from your army. You're synergistic. So it just doesn't make sense to do that. So like the Warp Gnaw can go through a no hole 9 away if he wants to deploy that way. I wouldn't. I would just run behind my screen. And then when the time is right, I'll make a 3-inch charge with him. Thanks. I'll just retreat and charge the planets out the way, or they've been killed. I mean, guarantee it, really. So, and I can use that reroll charge roll if I want for free from Thankor. So, I just don't see the need. I just think it's one of those things that people go, "Oh, when you can teleport." I'm like, well, usually teleporting is actually quite shit, unless there's a reason or there's something to do with it. And Skaven already have that. You already have repositioning with all your infantry, and you already have no holes. So you.
Oh, I was going to say, most people are going for teleports for the later game objective stealing. But again, if you're, as you've just said, putting 2 null holes in your opponent's territory, then you've already got a way to do it consistently. And you put your spell casting in that death frenzy as opposed to wogging it up with a skittle leap.
If I want to steal your objective, I'll just charge you, activate first, and move away. Or I'm just going to retreat and charge, or I don't need to do that. So I don't recommend skittle leap. But I see why people take it, but I think it's wasteful. But
no, and I wanted to ask you some of these questions. Like, I wanted to ask you about the Bale Wind. I wanted to ask you, because these are some things that I've heard people talk about in the past, and they wanted some thoughts and ideas, and you got to like, no, this doesn't work that way. No, you can't think about that way. Or this is why you may not want to go down the Vortex route. Because we did talk a lot about it in the early days. It's just now it's not as good, and I think your points can go elsewhere. Despite KO taking it as a spell in the bottle, but they're taking it for a different reason, and they can drop it from their ships.
They can stand right in front of you, and you can't do anything about it, and they're quite happy to stand right in front of you. That's quite different to Skaven.
Correct.
So I think it makes more sense in a KO army. So convert some like beer barrels or something. I don't know. Set them on fire. But yeah, I think it makes more sense in a KO army than a Skaven army at the moment. Just sad.
So like if I'm going to use the Skaven army, like how are you winning your games? And I think if anyone's been listening to this hour and a bit between the couple of internet drops we've had, again, apologies to anyone who's listening to this live or on the replay. God bless Australian internet.
Australia.
How are you winning your games? I'm hearing movement is critical. I'm hearing objective claiming is critical, obviously. But like, what are the things that you're thinking about to win your games?
Basically, what you said, like movement, objective playing the objectives, baiting people, screening, just giving them an overwhelming number of choices to. Over what to attack, so there's no real right answer. So again, if you go for the Warp Gnaw, I'll get you with the Stormbowman. It's fine. I'm on the objectives. Shoot my Warp Gnaw. Go ahead. I'm winning.
If you go for the Vermin Lord, I've got the Brood Horror.
Yeah, and they've got the ability to remove other hordes off the objectives, and that's where Thankor comes in. Because you're playing like Fire Slayers. Thankor loves Fire Slayers, but I mean, no one likes that big block of 20, I think it is now. It's not 30 anymore.
Yeah, Hearthguard's 20.
You can deal with that. There's not really anything you can't handle, but it doesn't mean you can beat every army. Skaven have all the tools necessary to beat everybody, but they can't necessarily put it all on the same list. So, like I said, the list is long-range threat. If I'm playing Zeech, I probably want that. If I'm playing, Hammer Hull army, I want Giselles, because I can just stand outside of your casting range and just shoot your wizards. If this, I'm required to go near you in some way, it's a lot harder. So and that's why the cannon's there, but it's not really enough. But so it's, they can do everything, they just can't do everything all at the same time. It's probably how the game should be. The state of the game at the moment is there's a lot of armies that can do everything as well. The Bone Reapers, for example, can do everything pretty well. They have the catapults, so they don't. And the catapults are a huge, problem for Skaven. So just with the bravery shot on the clan rate units, it just deletes them, especially if the Bone Reapers go first. So
I think what I'm hearing is having multiple threats. We have seen lists in the past where they've been all pestilent. 4 blocks of 40 plague monks. We've seen that route. Add Death Frenzy on that. Obviously, the War Scrolls change for the Plague Monks, but I'm hearing a utility list and having multiple various threats to hand to your opponent.
Yeah,
it's probably a stronger build right now in Skaven because we are in that scissor paper rock. We've got the first turn charging more Crushers and Stonehorns, but then we've got the magical supremacy of Zench, Hallowheart, and Seraphon. Then we've got this. We've got the shooting and the flying high and moving anywhere on the board of KO. Having various ways to defeat each of those is something you should consider in your list building for Skaven.
Yeah, and essentially it's sort of you're either going to try and kill them or play the objectives, ideally both. But if they try and stop you playing the objectives, they're not killing the stuff that's going to kill them. And if they're killing the stuff that's going to kill them, you've got 120 rats and objectives. And that's sort of how the list plays. So they can't really deal with everything at the same time. And then your idea is to think, well, okay, you've killed my Warp Gnaw, but I'm going to stand on this for 3 turns and win. Or, all right, you've killed all my clan rats, but I'm just going to wipe your army out. That's sort of how the list is. Your opponent can't do everything at the same time. And there's a lot of things in the game at the moment which is just mass damage into one unit, and Skaven don't really mind that. So, go ahead, overkill my Warp Gnaw 5 times over. He's dead or useless because he's taken some damage, but move around you. So it's board control and damage if need be. Multiple threats. Can't be everything. There's some things that will just kill it, but they can. I think
3 to 4 major threats, I think, is where people need to be with their list building.
Yeah, and the reason, like I said, Storm Fiends are great, but they fall apart and they're useless by killing 1 5-wound hero. It's a bit, vulnerable. At least list, I thought there's multiple different things you can do, even if not everything goes your way, and they're mostly consistent and reliable. So,
I noticed you didn't have a Bombardier in your list. Any reason why you haven't chosen the Bombardier?
Because the engineer is 20 points cheaper, and if the Bombardier was still 100 points, I would have taken him instead and just have him use more warp power on himself and fire the Doom Rocket. But I couldn't fit him in. So it would have been a 2010 point list. If not, I would include the Bombardier.
If only TOs would allow you to go over by 10 points.
If only. I had another list I wrote, which was 2010 points, which didn't fit, which did have Gisele's in. But
it's the worst.
Yeah, it's just a part of it, I'm afraid. But yeah, I would have taken the Bombardier if he would fit. But you could take a Bombardier and a Doom Wheel, and that would fit. Instead, if you did take the Doom Wheel instead of the cannon, take a Bombardier as well, and he can just more warp power himself, jump himself through a no hole if he wants to, and then just fire the Doom Rocket at someone. So go for it.
Love it.
And then if it does something, great. If it doesn't, no harm done. So
last 2 questions I've got for you. I've got a million questions, Dan, but I think there's 2 burning questions I've got for you. Is 1, how do I beat you? As a Skaven player, what are your biggest concerns that your opponent's going to do to stop you from winning, I guess is the question.
Depends what they bring to the table.
Like, are you concerned about me killing your hero? No, but like, are you concerned about me killing your heroes? Are you concerned about me, having more bodies on the table than you? Are you concerned about high armor saves? Like, what's the thing that's going to most put you in a position not to win?
None of those things, because more bodies than me, Thankful will have a field day.
Yeah,
high armor save, Thankful will have a field day in the cannon.
I'm trying to lead you somewhere. I'm trying to lead you somewhere.
An answer that Skaven is Skaven. I think Zeech are a big counter to Skaven, just because they ability just to and sort of outrange. I think KO could be a problem because they can drop down and sort of gun you off, but yeah, it's kind of hard to say. Like, I'm not familiar enough with a couple, like Slaves to Darkness book, for example, of a couple of the newer lists. Bone Reapers have to deal with Thankful, or they're messed up. But if they do have, the catapults, it's going to be a hard job for Skaven. really, I wrote this list just so that that's a difficult question to answer. But anyone can be anybody at the end of the day, and there's no one obvious way that the list loses because there's so many different things. Someone can just annihilate all the infantry quickly, which I'm sure some people can. I don't know, like Stonehorns and things like that.
I guess I'm thinking about like
but
I guess what I'm thinking about is like what do I have to think about if I'm a Skaven player that I need to avoid? Is it the turn 1 charging more Crusher and Stonehorn before I've set up my buffs? Is it like there's so many so I'm hearing
the
there's
biggest...
nothing. Please.
Well, I'm sure there is. I just can't think of them, because this is just how I like to think. But if they do get sort of turn 1 charged, I don't have a command point. So if I did play, I'll see out Bone Reapers, for example, and they use the 2 catapults to bravery shot the 2 units of clan rats, that would be a problem.
And I guess you haven't got the bell yet down. The bell down.
I haven't got the bell down yet, and if they're smart enough to go first, which often they're not, but if they're smart enough to go first, they can delete all 80 clan rats before I get a 10, and then it's going to be a hard game. So, because I'm just as low body count as they are at this point. So, and over the next couple of turns, they can will it on the storm vermin and really stop the objective play. So if you can remove the clan rats, that's great, and if you can take the punch from what's behind it, even better. But I think outgunning them and outranging them in this instance is quite achievable. But it's a competitive list. I'm sure. I think Zeech still just destroys Skaven and always have. But because their ability just to anti-horde spells and things like that, whilst being... I think Stonehorns, like multiple Stonehorns, would be a problem because like one cannon isn't enough just to deal with that, and if Death Frenzy doesn't go off, they're just going to smash you.
And like Zen's got the big blocks. Zen's got the big block of pink horrors that can also play the board.
That'd be a problem. Well. They'll whittle you down, and but I still think they can hang in there and compete with them. But I think they can definitely. Yeah,
I'm not saying you play Zench with pink horrors. It's an auto loss. It's more about like these are the things that I need to think about if I do play up against a turn 1 Stonehorn. These are the things I need to think about, or maybe maybe I do have to have a command point up my sleeve to ensure that if that happens in the tournament, I can at least inspiring presence, or I've got something to handle.
Yeah, if Death Frenzy is the best way of dealing with stuff like that, and then turn 1 they might just hit a screen of 40, which I don't mind, and they can kill that. Go ahead, but if I fail Death Frenzy next turn, or they've moved a wizard forward to unbind me or whatever, and it doesn't go off or it doesn't work, Fankwall is kind of useless in that fight. And so they definitely have bad matchups. I do think that sort of Beast Lord Raider army would be a problem. So different things really, and also some things can't just hit that hard. So Daughters of Cain are a problem, just because they've dropped off their radar big time, but I still think they're just as good as they ever were. I think people just got bored of playing with them because more stuff came out. I don't think they got worse. So I think those big blocks of witches will still kill stuff. That seems to have changed in the meta recently, but I still think Hagnar is, I don't understand how Hagnar could survive, yet they nerfed the Vermin Lords, which were an overreaction to begin with in my mind. So I don't know.
I don't know.
Riders don't make sense to me.
I don't know how Hagnar has avoided the bullet that it has, but and then obviously that's another concern because they have lots of bodies and they have resilient bodies. But again, like it's less about the individual choices; it's more about things to consider either in your list building or in your play style, or even in your target prioritization.
Yeah, target prioritization. I mean, if you take Fankwall down, there's no Death Frenzy, and then you can just smash them. But so if you have a way of taking them out from across the board or bringing him down quickly, or just auto-unbinding Death Frenzy, which each can do, and then taking out the Horde itself, then there's not much they can do about it. I don't know, it's very hard to think of about playing someone. I think Seraphon would definitely have a good time against Skaven at the moment because they can just remove the Horde very easily, and they can also remove some of the characters. Like I said, it's sort of the list I wrote is amended to the current meta Fankwalls there because of the current meta because of Death Frenzy and anti-horde because of Bone Reapers, and I think Acolytes have sort of lost out because KO can just shoot them off. Seraphon can just shoot them off with salamanders. I think Zeech can just remove them with pink horrors. Bone Reaper's catapults will just delete acolytes. So I think they've lost a lot of their tools. I do think the 9 Storm Fiend thing was always a bit dumb because it's resting on one engineer. Yeah. And even if they took 2 positioning wise, I just always thought it was a bit reckless. So going for that bridge thing, I never thought that was worthwhile. It's just a waste of points. So some armies can just shoot the engineer and then the Storm Fiends are useless. So I always thought 6 was the right number. I still think Storm Fiends have a really good place in Skaven. I wouldn't be object to using them. So, but protect the engineers. So
I've played a bunch of Storm Fiend lists and they are hard to kill. Last question
You can ignore them entirely. Just kill the engineer. They don't need to. So they're shit without the engineer.
Yeah, I mean, but they are a big block of wounds, and I think even if they just come into combat and tie you up, they are a lot of wounds to take down. I think that's the key, especially when you've got the guy with the isn't there one guy with like 7 wounds or I can't remember the
Doomflayer gauntlets and the shock gauntlets. I always take Doomflayers, but I'm in the minority in that one. But I don't know why I always thought Doomflayers were better. So. Yeah.
Last question I've got for you, Dan, and kind of wrap things up is based on all of your experience, playing with the army, what have you learned about Skaven, or what have you learned about your book that might not be as obvious to the person who's reading it for the first time? Like what has either worked that you didn't expect to work, what didn't work that you thought was going to work, or what have you just learned that has probably surprised you, or at least again, not obvious to the newer player?
I think board control is the absolute strength. I think they're better at that than anybody in the game. That's how I played them before, and that's how I play with them now. And I just think if a lot of newer players do look jolly at damage, and like I said, I spoke to you before about movement trays. I see them as a huge handicap for any Skaven player. If you're using movement trays as Skaven, you are handicapping yourself. I just think if you're looking at this is how much damage this can do, or that can't do damage, therefore it is shit, or that sort of mindset, they're probably better options for you because there are things that can hit harder. That said, they can do everything. They're capable of doing everything, not all in one go, but the best way to play them is by being, they're kind of like a saboteur type army, really. They're there to make things difficult for your opponent. If they have this giant unit which hits incredibly hard and only 2 of them can get into combat because you've retreated and charged, tagged them or whatever, and you're outpointing them, that's fine. And by the end of the game, if you're dead, doesn't matter, you've won. So I just think people overlook the value of movement. I think retreat and charge is one of the best abilities in the game, and people never really talk about it. So that's it.
And I was going to point out, I think the thing that most people aren't using enough of, whether you're Skaven or you're not a Skaven player, is the retreat. I think people get into combat and they just try to fight their way out, and they will fight to the very end. Retreating as a tactic, people don't think about. Retreat and charge, or run and retreat. Those types of things are just invaluable. So I think, to your point, lean into the retreat. If it makes sense, retreat, go for the objective, move around the board, retreat. You're not bloodletters. You're not, this super tanky combat unit. Yes, you can put a punch in, but it's not the primary thing that Skaven does best. That is board control. Yep. That is movement. That is making your opponent have a bad time by taking over the board.
Yeah, and even if you don't have retreat and charge, you can charge kind of like a shitty unit and still attack somebody. So I've done that plenty of times with multiple armies. So someone has like a support hero that you can get to, and you charge him, you just leave one model in range of that big unit. You don't need to retreat and charge. So I just think Skaven are more efficient at doing that than anybody else. So yeah, that's it really. So
yeah, I would
Skaven
agree. Especially
I'd still use them. So
especially now that skinks have lost that ability, unless they're in a battalion or starborn or something. They used to have it on the war scroll. Now it's changed. Like you guys,
yeah, that retreat move, I always thought that was inferior to retreat and charge, just because you can tag. I think Skaven are better at tagging. And like, okay, I've avoided one round of combat, but now next turn, your turn, you're going to smash the shit out of me. Whilst if I'm tagging you and I'm sort of positioning properly, that I can stall you for 4 or 5 turns. So I always thought Skaven were better at that. I would have taken retreat and charge over the skink move any day. And Skaven now have that skink move in combat, so mess with people's activations. So they're good.
It's brilliant.
So
Dan, despite Australia's internet trying to take us down, this has been super valuable. I hope everyone has enjoyed this video despite some of the challenges we've had. Dan, if people wanted to, technical difficulties, Australia's internet's hot garbage. The things that I would do to get something like you guys and the rest of the world have. But if people wanted to find more about you, Dan, they wanted to chat to you, they want to kind of see what you're up to now, where can people find you and chat to you?
On Twitter, I believe my name is Brashier Danquil.
It's in the description. It's in the description. I put it, guys.
I'm on the AOS Coach Discord page as well, so I'll see things there. The Sydney Facebook page, AOS page. So, but Twitter's probably your best bet if you want to message me directly, or just message me on Facebook. If you can find me, people do. So, whatever.
You're an awesome man, and you are so knowledgeable when it comes to Skaven. So I'm hashtag blessed to have you talking about them on the channel again. And we did do a 3-hour deep dive called Faction Focus Skaven. If you wanted to know more about Dan's thoughts on, obviously the meta's changed a little bit, points have changed, but again, in not long we're going to have Lumineth, we're going to have Gargants coming out, we've got a new General's Handbook coming out, so these should be a few ideas to help you get started. Who knows what's going to be like when the tournaments kick off. Dan, any shout outs you want to make before we kind of wrap things up?
Mortally Wounded podcast, we were going to do an event called Sydney Slaughter, where I was going to help run that with Chris Warfare and James Mabry, and I'm sure when this is all done, and it looks like we're approaching the end of it, that will be reorganized. So I would probably give note to that, because I think there'll be a bit of a boom of tournaments, and I think that will be one of them, and I think it will be good fun. And so probably that. So I don't have any other things I can think of. So.
Well, feel free to support my event in October if you want to. If you want to be a TO. I
didn't get a ticket for that.
No, it's fine.
I would like to be a part of it though. I'll get a ticket, or I'll help you run it, or whatever it may be. And Hayden just messaged me because I didn't shout him out, so shout out to Hayden.
Shout out to the Elf Bro for not doing anything here.
For manipulating me.
All right,
shout out to Scabbers.
Shout out to Scabbers. Guys, thank you very much for hanging out with us. I hope you are inspired and have a few ideas on how to get Skaven back on the table. They are still a really cool army. They are a fun army. They've got a lot of tools. People have dropped off for whatever reason, and I think Dan has proven that they have their place in the meta. We just need to think a little bit differently on how we build for the current challenges. So, Dan, thank you very much. Closing comment is, do not forget your triumph. I think that's the key here.
I've done that, a lot. Yeah.
All right, well, I'm closing off the show. Dan,
Good
thank
point.
you very much. Audience, don't forget your triumphs. Until next time, don't forget your triumphs. Bye.